weed, is it just harmless? Is it a plant? Do we legalize? Do we not? So that is the subject of today. So why do you love weed? General relaxation, yeah. If you are going through stress, if your life is in a mess, I think you've heard from the presentations. Weed is a relaxation is a relaxation drug. Yeah, we're going to see the science about it. Creativity and flow. Anyone has gone to the interview after puffing? Personally, I can't do an interview without it. Facts. I, when I was in med school, I've seen my classmates here. We used to have what we call orals. When you read, you say, have you had conversations when you're high? Yeah, you dig deep. So we'll see why. It's a psychoactive substance. Social bonding. Have you been to an event and you smell something? Yeah. Well, the first thing that happens, you smile. So you make friends. Somebody said in clubs where people drink alcohol, there's a lot of fights. I've never seen a social joints where people fight. Yeah. So it's a very good bonding drug. Sleep. I'm one of those people who struggle with my sleep cycles. If the sharp boys, the people who work at night. Pain relief. We're going to see which substances, which type of cannabis helps with it, and then spiritual and cultural use. You've talked about Rasfataris. Which else in Kenya? Do we have a cultural, spiritual bond? I think we can say we have one here right now. So that's what you love with. I was told to give a brief history about about weed. If you have read history, it has been there since time immemorial. More than 10,000 years ago. From Central Asia to the Chinese, to how it came to Kenya through the Indian Ocean. I don't want to spend much time on what was not interesting. So if you have a question also in the midst of the presentation, you can actually ask him. So from the history, it's a plant that has been there for a long time, more than 10,000 years ago. If you have read about the history of Shakespeare, I think you heard Urit in his garden. If you've heard about Chernobyl, it was used to clean the radioactive materials. You've heard the history of the colonial history with weed in our country. So there's a very interesting theory about weed in Kenya. So it came through the Indian Ocean by the traders in Kenya, especially the lake regions. So if you've been to Western Luanda, Kisumu, it was quite a very common drug. It was used as medicine. But then if children used to if you had diarrhea, okay, you would stuff it off your ass. You guys have heard of it. So in Western Nyanza, very common. If you talk to your great, that's why it used to be planted around the compound. It was very good for diarrhea, for those people who are sucking with appetites. And then during the colonial era, when they came in, I think around the 1940s. So there's a history. The Maus were using weed. Okay, when you take weed, what happens? So there's a set of psychosis. So psychosis where you have altered perceptions of mood, illusions, hallucinations. So the colonialists came up with this, and this is very important when you talk about legalization. So we call the Opium Ordinance bans in 1914. So these were set up by the colonialists to try and limit our use of the substances. Post-independence, people talk about government. I'm heavy into policies, and perhaps we talk about legalization. Yeah. So in the 1994, we have the Narcotics, Drug, and Psychotropic Substance Act. That is what is limiting us from really blowing trees. Ideally, here people should be smoking. Yeah. Remember Ken Okot? Where is the bill right now? How far? No idea. Of course, you have this body called Nakada. All Nakada gives us is bad news. Yeah. We're talking about 90% rise in cannabis use. So mine is to give us facts, where we are, what we need to do. I'm trying to push it. Yeah. So that is the bang weapon. The Mau Mau Bang. It's actually very interesting. When was Madari opened? Yeah, it's one of the oldest facilities. Yeah, 19. Yeah. So in the colonial rule, there was in the 1950s and 60s. Okay. So it was claimed that the Mau Maus were fueled by marijuana. There's an interesting psychiatrist called Carrothers. Okay. So he published an article, The Psychology of Mau Mau. So he claimed that toxic psychosis among Africans is what made the need for it to be banned. So remember, studies were done about it. It was debunked. And so basically, it was a dope that was used to weaponize weed against the Mau Maus. This made the colonialists come up with tight rules, which unfortunately we still adopted them. Yeah. So it gives sense that a psychiatrist is on the podium also trying to give the alternative side of marijuana. Did any one of you guys know this? So perhaps when you talk about the illegalities of marijuana in Kenya, it stems way back. So I always tell people, even in our political scenes, you have to understand the history of marijuana in our setting, how it's illegal, how they use the psychiatrists to push the narrative. Now, so this is the facts. We smoke a lot of weed. I think 6.3%. This is according to Nakada, but I think it should be more, around 10%. Around 10%, 10 of 55 million, around 5 million Kenyans smoke weed. Of course, there's been a rise, an 80% rise in the amount. Now, there's something that is very important. A good number of us are addicted to marijuana, but we don't know. So there's also almost a 50% addiction to marijuana. Makes sense? Like, out of 10 people, there are 5 who are always addicted in your group. Now, this is one of the most important slides I was told to talk about. The chemistry. I've seen people here talk about hemp. What else? There is hemp, there is marijuana. So what do you smoke? I think one of the most important things that I to speak about this, understand what to smoke here. So there is cannabis sativa, which is the species. Yeah, and then cannabis has cannabis sativa, there are two species. One is hemp. Okay. You guys know hemp? You have used hemp? You have used hemp? You have used marijuana? What's the difference? Yeah. So there's what we call the THC, yeah? Tetrahydrocannabinol. So there are a group of chemicals we call cannabinols. In your body, you have the endocannabinol system. So it's like a hormone systems, yeah? So this hormone system is responsible for what you feel when you take weed, yeah? So sleep, itching, anxiety, what else? Euphoria. So in the body, you have control. These are hormones. The same way we have hormones, estrogens, testosterones, everything. So they're regulated. So these chemicals, so the tetrahydrocannabinol, this cannabinol, this CBN, CBG, all those. The most important thing is that hemp has less than 0.3% of THC. So THC is a very important chemical. It is psychoactive. What do you understand by psychoactive? Uh, Psychoactive does not mean psychosis. Psychosis is a disease state. So psychoactive means anything you've heard of psychoactive, psychedelics, psychotropics. So psychoactive means this substance is able to get into your brain and it's able to affect how you think, how you feel. So your mood, your thought process, your perceptions, and your feelings, okay? So THC is psychoactive. So it's cannabis that is psychoactive. So when you take it, you feel what you feel, yeah? You feel good, your perception of time, your mood, your behavior, your attitude changes. Now, hemp on the other side has less than 0.3%. Marijuana has more than 0.3%. So in summary, hemp has less than 0.3% of THC, which is the psychoactive substance. Marijuana has more. Okay? Now, people talk about medicinal marijuana, which is CBD. Okay? So it does not get you high. So whatever you guys want legalize is is different. So you see them planting medicinal marijuana, that is CBD. Makes sense? Now, how do we take weed? Most of you guys smoke. Okay. So smoking is easy because when you smoke, goes into your respiratory system. Vaporize. How do you guys take away? Just smoke. Or alternatively, you bake. Because you can take cookies, you can do it in your food. So your we guys take velo, you can valorize marijuana. Now the difference between these different methods is how long have you been out or high after you took cookies? Now another question I was asked about combining these substances. You find stoners, we have found stoners who don't even like alcohol, or those who don't like smoking. So when you take both of these things, this is what we call drug interactions. When you take alcohol and flagyl, you have been told of those stories, yeah? The same thing happens with this. So things like cigarettes, things like alcohol, they increase the metabolism of THC. So that's sometimes you get high rush and then you feel kind of dysphoric. Okay. So you have to understand one of the things I felt. Opioids, you know what opioids are? Morphine, tramadol, feel pain. So somebody has said weed helps with pain. So do opioids. What means what happens when you take both of them? Psychedelics, you guys take shrooms. Yeah, so what does it do to you? So psychedelic is a psychoactive substance. Marijuana is a psychoactive substance. So you start hallucinating, you see things, you have illusions. I think you've seen someone who you're smoking and somebody maybe wants to go to the toilet and they use the opposite door. Or somebody sees a pen and they think it's something else. You've seen those incidences. So, because when you're mixing these things, you have to know what you're mixing. Anyone knows what blood-brain barrier is? Yeah, so your brain has a defense mechanism that protects some chemical substances from going through. Okay. All of us will be crazy. So it's like a wire mesh that protects substances from going through. So most of the medications that you take do not cross. This is also an important slide for those of us who I get a lot of clients who want to go abroad. They've been told to come for toxicology report. And one of the things that we test is cannabis. Okay? So depending on how you take it, remember we're talking about how you take it. Okay? 5 to 7 days, maximum 30 days. Again, when you're talking about the metabolism of drugs, most drugs are removed through the kidney. Okay? So that's why we'll take your urine. When you're taking your urine, it shows. If you want to leave the country and you want to get tested, you should be aware of that that duration. So there's actually like 7 years, maximum 1 to 2 months. If you feel like you have a test that needs to be done, you prepare yourself according to the timelines, yeah? What do you feel when you take it? Yeah? Euphoria is that elation feeling. You're feeling good, you're feeling nice, you feel relaxed. Munches, you guys eat like crazy. Somebody else say you go to Uber Eats and Glovo, the cannabinoids they were talking about, they activated, makes you want to eat more. Paranoia, we have all been paranoid. Like I told you guys, you have to know what you are taking. I don't know who your plug is, where you get your shit from. I hear there's Ethiopian, there's Malawian. Yeah. So one thing that I'm sure 50% of us take the wrong shit. Altered time perception. Have you thought what time it is? Yes. So those are short term. Long term, your IQ drops by 8. Is it true? Somebody was saying, and it's very important also from the neurochemistry of the brain, yeah? There's a study that was saying that Gen Zs are the only generation who are dumber than their previous generation. So, like I said, I'm not here I'm a man of science. I speak science. So we need to do studies. That will be part of what we'll be talking about, yeah? Now, there's something that I want to talk about. Cannabis use disorder. When we talk about disorder, it means this thing is affecting all aspects of your life negatively, yeah? So, if you're supposed to go to work, you go to work late because you're smoking. You forget about your family because you're smoking. Okay, so basically in psychiatry, use disorder means it's not just about smoking the weed alone. It affects other aspects of your life. Hallucination basically means you are you are perceiving things that are not there. So it can be visual hallucination. You can be hear somebody seeing things. Auditory, you are hearing things that are not there. Delusions is also a part of psychosis. What is delusions? So delusion is where you have a false belief. One of the arguments about it does not cause lung cancer, like about smoking, about cigarettes, yeah? So there's bronchitis. Remember the bronchus, the lung, basically inflammation. What's for the brain under 25? Makes sense? So ideally, it's not good for you to smoke before 25 because the development of the brain, maximum 25 years. This is what we call the prefrontal cortex. Who knows the function of the prefrontal cortex? Prefrontal cortex is where your higher senses, so you make decisions. When you are crossing the road, I should cross. If you are a business guy, you plan. So, ideally, before 25, this area is not fully developed. So your businesses are allowed to fail when you are below 25. Overdose, is there something like weed overdose? There's nothing like weed overdose. What you feel is the extent of the highness. Okay? Psychosis risk, it's real. When you guys have time, you can come to Madari. 80% of the Gen Z that I admit is weed psychosis. That is facts. Okay? And I think part of the reason is we don't take pure stuff. I come to realize you guys on Alixiwa sijui heroin, sijui nini. Yeah? Weed is everywhere, so make sure you get the good strain. We are just around 150 psychiatrists in Kenya. We have a whole weed problem. And part of my work as a public health expert is to make sure that we have safe marijuana use. So when you're tabling this thing to parliament for legalization, you need doctors so that at least you can give that angle. Mine is to ensure that we have an equilibrium of what we take. I personally don't tell my patients to stop anything. I can't tell you stop alcohol. It's simple. If you go to a doctor and they tell you stop smoking, stop alcohol, stop weed, stop having sex, stop going to Sabina Joy, they're probably lying to you. If you can avoid it, I always tell people if you can avoid it, do. Because they are seeing really the detrimental effects at that point. Difference between alcohol and weed. This one is a psychoactive substance. What does it do? It alters your perception, your attention, orientation, your memory. I like Amusal about it makes me very self-conscious and very self-aware. And even if you're struggling with your mental health issues, it's very easy to treat that depression, that anxiety if you're self-aware and self-conscious. I think you have heard these arguments. I will not go back to them. I think they were covered during the questions. Should we legalize? You have given your reasons why we should legalize. How much should be invested in science and research? Everything, yeah? People of science, we should have more people who believe in science, yeah? Because when you invest in research, we get the right strain, we get the right value for it. Like I said, mine was not to tell you whether to take it or not. It was just science, yeah? I have as much as possible to try to be neutral. What do you do with your business? It's yours. So you understand what you take, what it does to you, and the effects. To legalize or not, there's have argued about economic. There's this argument. So when you legalize weed, what will happen? Economic growth. Are you sure? We have oil in Turkana. You guys, have you seen the economic growth? Okay. We talk about having the right strain in it. I think when you legalize it, you put research, you have the right strain in the market. Yeah. The reality. So is weed legal or illegal in Kenya? Illegal. You guys go to Ibiza and you smoke. You guys go on the streets and you smoke. So is it legal or not? It's illegal on paper. Korogosho, it's legal. So there's that gray area about legality, depending on where you are. So why do you guys think weed is illegal and cigarette is not? So the legality of this thing is more about business, yeah? If you read the history, tobacco versus cigarettes, and why it's illegal or not. So we have seen why it works. There's what we call dopamine. I think dopamine is the pleasure hormone. So weed acts on your dopamine, hippocampus, basal ganglia, those areas that give you pleasure. Principle. Pay attention to your withdrawal symptoms. If you stop smoking it for 2 days, and this is very important because most of you guys, a good number of you guys are in corporate, yeah? So do you know your bosses are struggling with weed withdrawal? Yeah. Yeah. So part of the people that we treat, or if you're in corporate these days, they say Gen Zs, you go for a tea break. Excuse me, tea break, you smell a lot of weed in the washroom. So it's because of weed withdrawal. So you have a CEO or a departmental director that stopped smoking weed for a few days. They fail to sleep. They show up at work sleepy. They cannot eat. They have abdominal abscess. They're always going to the toilet. So they have weed or marijuana withdrawal. So how do you treat it? There are two options. Continue taking the weed or you take the drugs. So most of your bosses continue taking the weed. So it's a vicious cycle. We have said weed stays in your system for 9 days, nothing like 7 years. You have understood about the endocannabinoid system and what it does. And the Nairobi Menace of Weed. That's my platform. It's called Mindfiti. So there's a problem of accessibility to healthcare caused by stigma. So if your colleague sees you in Madare, what will happen? Yeah? So actually, big companies are firing people because of mental illness. So if a colleague sees you in Madare, a photo is taken by you and is shared to the groups, you're likely to be fired. So it's a digital health platform. It's a whole platform on addiction. We treat addiction of everything, behavioral and substances addiction.